What's up, world? It's your boy, the Black World Traveler. Today, this video is about a lot of these Black Americans being arrogant, getting online, bragging to people that, oh, I'm African, and you guys don't think you're African, and you're saying you're indigenous. And they're like basically shitting on people who are saying that they have, indigenous blood in America, which we do. And the difference between an African person and a Black person in America is that they are an African, we are descendants. You would never be African, you will always be a descendant. There's nothing wrong with being a descendant because you didn't have the power to control that. We've been in America for a long, long time. And so a lot of Black people that live in America, we are descendants of Africa. Some Black people who came here and weren't descendants, some were actually indigenous here. You don't know who was what, but the thing about it, just because you get a DNA, stop being so cocky and getting here, bragging about what tribe you're from. What's crazy about it? People are claiming something. It's so funny. The reason why I say you don't know what it is to be African. We don't know what it is to be African. And the reason why we don't know because we've never lived in an African household. We don't know what it is. To be African, you have to be born in Africa or born by a parent from Africa, not a descendant. When you are a descendant, you will never be African if you're a descendant. You'll only be a descendant. Let me tell you the difference between a descendant and an African. When you get, for instance, when you get your DNA test, right? The DNA test will link you with 4, 5, 6 different tribes. They say, oh, you're part Congo, you're from Nigeria, and you also have 5. Bro, that's not how it works, bro. If you understand African culture, most African cultures date within their tribes. Dude, I got a whole bunch of African friends. They all date within their tribes. When you are African, you got to realize there's 54 countries in Africa. And you know how many languages are there? You know how many tribes are there? So say if you're Nigerian, I'll give you a good example. If you're Nigerian, right? Say you go get your DNA and they say, oh, you're 54% Nigerian and this and that. Do you understand that most Nigerians date within each other? I mean, some Africans will date other tribes, but most of the time they date within their culture. And if they date within culture, say if the mother is Igbo and the father is Yoruba, right? The kids are going to speak both dialects. They're going to speak Igbo and Yoruba. And then, even if I said, man, can you speak Pidgin? Like a lot of Black people don't even know what Pidgin is. There's dialects that they speak in English. In Nigeria, they speak Pidgin. They speak the same thing in Ghana. It's a different way. It's a broken English. In Liberia, they speak a broken English. And basically, Pidgin is just like the patois or like Creole in Belize. Because you hear Jamaicans speak patois, you hear Belizean people speak Creole. When you hear Nigerians speak Pidgin, it sounds very similar. That's the reason why Burna Boy kind of attracted a lot of fans, because when you hear people speak Pidgin, it sounds a lot like patois. See, I got a lot of homies that are Bantu, right? They're Bantu Somalians. They're Bantu Somalians and Bantu Kenyans. Now the thing about it, they speak Mai, which is their language, right? And see, I know that because and I talked to my African buddies about this. I said, bro, I can never claim to be African because I don't know what it is to be African. Even if I have the bloodline, I could never claim to be an African because, number one, African is a continent. So you have to claim, if you're given 4 or 5 different tribes in your DNA test, bro, that makes you a mutt. That makes you mixed. Most Africans don't mix like that. And if they do, they know the languages that they're from. If they're from 3 different tribes, you're going to speak the languages of all these tribes because that's how they do it. Because you don't want, if you're from 2 different tribes, whenever you go to the other family, you're going to know, because the mother's going to teach you the language and the father. So if they have 2 different languages, you're going to learn both languages. My friend, for instance, Hassan, he was here yesterday. He speaks 6 languages. He speaks Mai, he speaks Swahili, he speaks Somali. So he gets around Somali people. They don't know he's Somali. His mom's Somali, his dad is Bantu. He understands both languages because whenever you are from multiple tribes, the parents teach you all the languages from the tribes. See, that's what we don't understand as Black Americans. That's African. When you have a tribe, when you actually are born either in Africa or even if you were born in America, if you're born under African parents from Africa in a tribe, that still makes you African. Because if my mother's from Louisiana, my dad's from Virginia. So we're Choctaw Blackfoot. That's what I know. My mother came from that generation. If my parents took a DNA and we linked, and they were saying that we were from another tribe, we were this tribe and that tribe, it makes us descendants, because we never know what it is to be African. Because whenever you are African, you got to know what country you're from. You got to know what tribe you're from. You got to know what family you're from. You got to know who your cousins are. You got to know the family tree. You got to know who you're dealing with. Because in those communities, the communities are very tight. Most African cultures are very, very tight. They are. Just like if you go to Australia, if you go to the Pacific Islands or any of the Melanesian islands, most people date within their culture. They date within the people that they know. Like how you go to school. When you would go to school, right, you would date girls in your school. A lot of times you wouldn't date girl in another school across town. A lot of times you date people in your area. Well, that's how a lot of Africans do. Like if it's like if you're from another part of Africa, right? Check this out. If you're from another part of Africa, like I say, anytime you're from another tribe, whatever parent is from that tribe, they're going to teach the kids that language and that culture. Because you could be in Nigeria, and there's different tribes. You could be in Ghana, it's a whole different culture, whole different tribes there. You go to Kenya, different tribes, Ethiopia, all different tribes. See, we black people don't have no education on Africa. We say, I'm African. Dude, Africans is a whole damn continent. That doesn't make you, oh man, I'm so tired of y'all bragging about this stuff, not know what you're talking about. You got to know what tribe you're from. You got to know what country you're from. If it said that you're Congolese and Nigerian and all this stuff, that's confusing. Because the average African know what tribe they're from. They know who their family is. They know how to speak the languages of that tribe. That's African. That makes you an African, because you actually understand the culture. You understand the language. You understand the rituals, the traditions. You know what to wear. You know what the food is like. You know, we don't know none of that, bro. Because you get a DNA test and you tell me you're African, you don't know nothing about the food. And then y'all go over here and move to these African countries, and then you over there, yeah, you taking money and build something, and then you complain about all the things that is not right in Africa, and then you put a video talking about how you left Tanzania or how you left Uganda because, well, this happened, that happened. Dude, you're not one of them. You are a descendant. That's all you are. You are a descendant of Africa. There's nothing wrong with being a descendant, because no one had the power to not be a descendant, because that's just happened in slavery, and it just didn't happen in slavery. See, we're only taught African in America as slaves. When I talk about us being transporters and exporters, how a lot of us got on ships and on boats and came over. There were a lot of black people that came through Australia, through the Pacific, through Asia, through the Americas, that traded, that actually settled on the land, that had their own civilization, that had their own places in Central South America, North America. We were already here. A lot of us was already here. When Africans came over, they all did not come on slave ships. Everybody came different. But when you take a DNA test and it's showing that you are a certain tribe, if you look at the difference, if you meet an African would tell you what tribe they're from. Even if they're from multiple tribes, they'll tell you, oh, my mom is this, my mom is that. But they'll speak the languages and they know the culture. We don't know that. So we are only descendants. Stop getting on here bragging about, oh, y'all blacks don't want to be African. And now we would never be African, but we've been in America too long. We will only be descendants. We would never be a true African. You can sit there and brag about how many DNAs you take. You don't realize how confusing it is when you look at a DNA and see that you're from 6 or 7 different tribes. African people don't do that. And if they do that, like I said, they're going to speak that. The parents are going to teach them, or the grandparents are going to teach each child about each. They're going to speak all those languages and know those tribes. So if you don't believe what I'm talking about, go to Africa and see what it's like. See, we can't go to Africa and find aunties and cousins and all. We can't find them. Even if you get linked to a certain tribe, you would never, ever know what it is to be in that tribe. Even if you marry an African, right? If a black man, say you marry an African woman, right? Or a woman from here marry an African man. If you're not living by the traditions of the African, your kids, see, the kids are still that father is gonna instill the culture. I've been seeing these black women marrying African men, they be complaining about the culture. Complaining about the people. Bro, that is different. See, that's different when you're dealing with an African American. Well, I don't call black American. It's different when you deal with a black American compared to an African American, which is an African. Because one thing about Africans, the African parents will always speak to the kids in a native language first. Because that's, no matter if you're in America, if you're in Canada, if you're in the UK, the African parents will always speak the tribe language to the kids first. So they know their culture, they know who they are first. Now, if you got an American father or an African mother, that American mom is going to teach those kids the dialect. She's going to teach them how to cook the food, because that's what they do. If a black American man marries an African woman, right? She's going to do what she got to do to make that work. An African man is not going to have kids by an American woman or a Caribbean woman and then don't teach his kids the culture. And a lot of times when a black man when an African man do marry a woman from here, sometimes they clash because she don't want him to be, I don't want them to be African. You know, you have to have, if you marry an African man, you have to have love for Africa first. You gotta want to embrace the culture of Africa. Because one thing about African people are going to embrace the culture that they were raised in, which is respectful. And your kids should be embraced with that culture. You should not have kids and then your kids are Igbo, got an Igbo dad and an American mom, and then they don't know nothing about their culture, because now you're taking what the parents work for. Trust me, if the parents have a lot of say-so when you're African. They have a lot of say-so because culture is very important. That's why a lot of times we get offended when we say, well, man, I like this African girl, but the dad don't really want me to date his daughter, because, bro, it's a traditional thing. You got to realize there's traditions. If you don't embrace the tradition, like if I marry an African woman, right? I'm going to get into her culture and learn her culture so I can be able to go with her. I want to know what I have to wear. I want to be able to learn. If I'm going to marry her, I got to learn her culture and support her culture. Learn her language so we can have an understanding. Not be an American and just don't learn, because, see, we don't have that no more. They still have a language. You still have a culture. You still can go see your relatives in Africa. So if you're married to an African, you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to go to the motherland and be able to, basically work in the community, because that's the importance of knowing what African is. That's what African is. You got to know if you're from the Congos, if you're from Somalia, if you're from Ethiopia, if you're from Kenya, if you're from Ghana, if you're from Nigeria, if you're from Chad, wherever you're from, you have to. And you have kids, your kids always going to have to learn that. The elders will make sure those kids learn, and the parents going to know. Most African kids are not going to let their kids just be here and not know the language. Now, when you go to Central and South America, it's different. They speak Spanish. That's not their native language. So, only reason why some people from like Panama and Colombia, if they're black, they'll teach their kids the Spanish, so when they go down there, they can communicate with their family, but that's not their native language. So sometimes if Latinos they come from Latin American, and then they end up only wanting the kids to learn English. I used to trip off that, but then I realized that's a colonized language too. That's the language they were colonized by, was Spanish. Or Portuguese in Brazil. So if they come to America and they only want to learn American learn American English because they're here, let them learn American English. But that's the difference between Africa. Even when you live in the islands, when you live in like the Torres Strait Islands or you're Samoan or Tongan, you notice all of them teach the kids. Every Samoan kid, if they're Samoan, they're going to learn the language. If they're Fijian, they're going to know the language, because they want the kids to still embrace the culture. You're gonna learn the language of the people that you were raised by, because that's a lineage. You can't you know, you don't want them to forget that, because that's an identity thing. See, in America, we speak English. We don't speak our dialects. We don't speak Choctaw and Blackfoot no more. We don't speak the languages we spoke. You got to realize, before Europeans came to America, none of us spoke English. We spoke the dialects we came with. If we didn't speak an African dialect, we spoke the Native American. We spoke a dialect as indigenous people here. There were dialects we spoke here. We had tribes here before Columbus came, before Europeans were bringing blacks. The blacks were over here. None of us spoke English. We all spoke different languages. When we got conquered and then enslaved, and then even when we rebelled, we were rebelling under the English language. Some of us, there were some black people that were here that never spoke English. That in the early 1900s were still speaking the Blackfoot or they were speaking Seminole. They were speaking different languages, you know, indigenous languages right here in America. And that's different between African. So if you like my content, please like, share, subscribe. It's your boy, the Black World Traveler. I am out.